Today, the UFC is headed back to China, where in the main event, the Russian James Bond, Piotr Yan, steps in the octagon with the Brazilian berserker, the Brazilian savage, Davison Figueiredo. Also, what about the former title challenger, Jean Xiaonan, steps in the octagon with Tabitha Ricci? What's going to happen there? Who you going to pick on that one? And also, what's going on in MMA right now? Apparently, not a lot. John Jones is still floating around. Bo Nichols making enemies. That's pretty much it. All of this and more on today's episode of Matter of Fact MMA. What's up? What's happening? Let's go. What's up, guys? We right back at it. We right back with it. It's your boy, Matt. We are here to go over UFC's next offering, which will go down in China. Also, a little bit of the news that's floating around in the MMA sphere. So, let's start out first with the card that's going down in China. It goes down Saturday morning for us here in the United States at the Galaxy Arena. So I check my fizz on for my nizzos. Where in the main event, Piotr Yan steps in the octagon with Davison Figueiredo. This is going to be a really important fight when you look at it, because right now, the division is kind of, bantamweight is kind of in a weird place, right? Merab is the champion, but something tells me Merab is not rushing to go back into the octagon. Because I feel like if he was really pressing the UFC to go out there and fight the next contender, they probably would have already have rolled something out. And I'm not really sure what the holdup is. I don't know why Umar hasn't already been slotted in there to go ahead and fight for the championship. I don't know if that's the UFC holding him back or if that's Merab who's not ready for that fight yet. But either way, bantamweight is kind of in a weird position right now. So you got Davison Figueiredo, who's on a winning streak. You have Piotr Yan, who's back in the win column, but he's not on a win streak. But, he's a former champion. So when I'm looking at this fight, I'm actually going to pick Piotr Yan to go out there and get the win. Even though Davison Figueiredo is on a winning streak, you kind of have to look at it, and I feel like Piotr Yan, outside of his fight with Merab, really good takedown defense, really good at scrambles, and I feel that if Davison wants to take this fight to the ground, I think he can get it to the ground, but I'm not sure if he'd be able to hold Piotr Yan down and keep him down, okay? And so with that being said, that leads me to believe that a lot of this fight might take place in the stand-up. You know what I'm saying? And Davison's stand-up is not going to be anywhere near Piotr Yan's stand-up, especially at bantamweight. So I believe if they keep it standing on the feet, over time, Piotr Yan, over the course of 5 rounds, will be able to pick him off, will be able to choose his shots correctly. He's got good accuracy. He's got speed. Generally, what you normally see out of Piotr Yan is he usually takes the first 1 to 2 rounds off to kind of figure out his opponent, to kind of get the pace, and also to kind of wear his opponent out. Let them go out there, shoot their shot, blow their load, pause, and they go out there, they do what they normally do best. And then the 3rd round starts and Piotr Yan is ready. You know what I'm saying? He's ready, he's got the cardio, he's got the stamina, and he generally puts a pace on his opponents, because a lot of time he's fighting in 5-round fights for the last 3 rounds that they can't match. And either he wins by decision or he finishes them. That's usually a Piotr Yan fight. And considering he's back in the win column, we're going to assume that's the form that he's going to take now. So I'd have to go along with Piotr Yan to get the win, because I think Yan is good enough to... He's going to get taken down, I believe, but I think he's good enough to get back to his feet. I believe he's good enough to come out of a scrambling position on top. And the fight's probably going to take place standing, and I believe that he completely outclasses Davison Figueiredo in that realm. Davison's got power, so if he lands, Piotr's definitely going to feel it, but I don't see Davison having the power to knock out Piotr Jan or severely hurt him to where he can get on top of him and finish him. So I got to go along with Piotr Jan to go out there and get the win in the main event. Next, in the co-main event. Also, I'm not going through all these fights. We're only going to deal with the main card. And I'm sorry, but we only going to deal with the main card because some of these fights on the prelims and the road to Octagon and everything, it's like, I don't know all that. You know what I'm saying? I ain't get ready to research all of that. But with that being said, in the co-main event, we have Zhang Xiaonan stepping in there with Tabitha Ricci. This is the fight I'm looking forward to seeing. I believe that Zhang Xiaonan is going to go out there and get the win. I think it's going to go the distance. I think it's going to go the full 3 rounds. But I think she's going to pretty much outclass Tabitha Ricci. Because if you look at it, Jan didn't do bad in her title fight. Her last loss is against the champion from at UFC 300, where Zhang Wei Li defeated her. But if you look back at that fight, Jan didn't do bad. She did well most of those rounds. And while Zhang Wei Li ended up getting the nod, via the scorecards, she did not look bad. There was a lot of rounds that I feel like she won. And, I mean, that's coming off the champion. And in my opinion, you lock Tabitha Ricci in the octagon with the champ, with Remember Me, Zhang Wei Li. Bro, Tabitha Ricci going home early. You know what I'm talking about? She ain't even going to use the full 5 rounds to get her out of there. But Zhang stayed in there. And so when I'm looking at this, she's a lot taller, more rangier, longer, better distance, better on the stand-up. Tabitha Ricci, extremely good on the ground, extremely good grappling. But I think that the size of Zhang Xiaonan will kind of negate that. And even if she gets taken down, I believe she has the power and the strength to get back to her feet. So I got to go along with Zhang Xiaonan to go out there and get the win. Next, we have Song Kenan stepping in there with Muslim Salikov. I know that going by DraftKings, the favorite right now is Muslim for the win, but I'm actually going to go along with the underdog pick of Song Kenan. I'm going along with that. They're fighting there in China. He's going to have the crowd behind him. I'm actually going to lean toward him to get the win because, looking at this, Muslim's last performance against Ponzinibbio, he looked okay, but Pons looked terrible. And I just felt like Salikov should have got him out of there a lot earlier, a lot easier. So I'm going to go along with Song Kenan, Song Kenan to go ahead and get the win. He's got dynamite in his hands when he lands. I think he's going to have the better stand-up than Muslim. Not that Salikov is any slouch in the stand-up department. He's not necessarily a Russian that relies completely on wrestling and grappling. But I'm going to go along with Song Kenan to get the win there. Next, we have the Joker, Wang Kong, stepping in the octagon with Gabriela Fernandez. Come on, man. I got the Joker, Wang Kong, to go out there. She's the new star on the block, you know what I'm saying? She's only had like one fight in the UFC, and she's already a star simply because she has a personality. So what we're about to get into about the current news in MMA just shows the newer, younger generation of MMA fighters don't have no personality. You know what I'm saying? Y'all rather play a video game than to go out and get into a bar fight. You know what I'm talking about? And so it's like when you see a fighter that comes in, even all she did was paint her face and had a good post-fight interview, it was enough because that's how boring a lot of the rest of the fighters are. I'm going to go along with Wang Kong to go out there and get the win. I think she finishes her first round. Moving on, we have No Time, Volkan Ozdemir, trying to make time for Carlos Alberg. Very interesting fight because at first glance, you think, oh, Carlos Albert's going to go out there and wash him. Okay, he's going to go out there, he's going to go ahead and get the job done, probably knock him out. But the thing about Ozdemir's got a solid chin on him. So he's hard to chin. He's hard to knock out and get him out of there. As well as more recently, we've seen him adopt more of a grappling style. Like, he's not going to do a blast double takedown necessarily, but we've seen him rely more on holding his opponents up against the fence so he can eventually get them to the ground using a few trips, things like that. So this is a different no time than the one that fought like DC for the title back in the day. You know what I'm saying? That Ozdemir was going out there to lay hands, and he was knocking cats out. He was sending them to the Shadow Realm on a regular. He was giving them first class tickets to the Shadow Realm, just handing it out like, you get a ticket, you get a ticket, you get a ticket, like Oprah. He's just handing out tickets, sending them to the Shadow Realm, you know. But this version of Volkan's a little bit more reserved, a little bit more strategic. And I think when you're talking about that against a fighter like Carlos Ulberg, you know, with Eugene Behrman in his corner coming out of City Kickboxing, they're definitely known for a really, really good, really precise game planning. And Carlos has looked really well since his first few, his early struggles in the octagon. Not a lot going on right now at City Kickboxing. Izzy's out of the loop. Volkanovski's out of the loop. You know what I'm saying? You know, the only star in the loop right now at the moment is Dan the Hangman Hooker. So I'm going to lean toward Carlos Ulberg to go out there and get the win. I could see a knockout probably about the third round if Carlos knocks him out. Otherwise, I think he'll outpoint and outscore him and end up winning via the scorecards. Finally, last fight on the main card at light heavyweight, we have Zhang Mingyang stepping in the octagon with Ozzy Diaz. So just looking at this right away, this looks like a setup fight to me. Set up in the sense that, you know, this is Ozzy Diaz making his debut in the UFC against Zhang Mingyang. I mean, it's no secret, especially by the fact they took road to the octagon there. The UFC is scrounging, they looking, they need whatever stars that they can drum up for China. I think this is clever matchmaking. I think Diaz is being brought in here to get leveled. So I'm going to go along with Zhang Mingyang to go out there and get the win against Ozzy Diaz. So that's the main card of UFC going to China. Goes down this Saturday morning for us. I believe it's like a 6:30 a.m. start time. I might be up that early because my son wakes up early, but I don't know if I'll be watching the fights yet. But I'll definitely be checking them out at some point on Saturday. Let's move over to any news in MMA. And there's not a lot of news in MMA. So we're coming off of UFC 309 in which, you know, of course, John Jones defeated Stipe Miocic in the main event. And, I mean, there's just not a lot happening at the moment. You know, the same John Jones news is, you know, permeating, circling around, you know, cycling through cycles, and we're talking about John Jones. But, you know, same old thing, man. I mean, it's still, he wants to fight Pereira or he's going to retire, and it's still going around that supposedly Dana and the UFC are trying to make a fight with Tom Aspinall. Nothing new on that front. You know, there's just not a lot going on right now because I just feel like, and I think even Ariel Helwani recently said something about this on his show, which a lot of his programming now that he separated himself and does everything via his own YouTube channel, I find a lot of his content, I don't know about you guys, maybe you all completely disagree. Some of it's kind of unwatchable because he kind of pillaged the MMA fighting YouTube channel and took a lot of the guys with him over to his YouTube channel. And frankly, some of those guys are actually pretty entertaining. But the problem is Ariel is on like almost every show. And he by far is the most unentertaining part of most of those programs, because you're just, or at least for me, I'm sick of his voice. I'm sick of the tone of his voice. I'm sick of his takes and his stances that he usually has, because most of them are fake. They kind of change by the day depending on what interview he's able to secure, and that's where his allegiances will, or alliances will normally be. And so the more programming he puts on his channel that features him is kind of like, bruh, like, just let the other guys be on here and you just do the primary main Ariel Helwani show. You know what I'm saying? Like, every time you try to watch like one of his other programs, Boys in the Back or something like that, with like Connor Burks, New York Rick, a lot of these guys are actually pretty entertaining. What drives them down is he shows up. And he just dulls their entertainment because he's there and he's got to, guys, I mean, oh, I don't understand why no one wants to come on my show. I'm a nice guy. And you're just like, dude, can you not be on your own channel for a little while? Just stick to the main show. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. That might be a spicy hot take by me, but it's just like, I don't know. And then like on MMA Fighting, I really like that channel. And those guys have been left high and dry. They're like short, like 5 men that they need. You know what I'm saying? So these guys are pulling overtime. Mike Heck and everybody, Jed Meshew, trying to do all the content because Ariel literally pillaged their entire staff and dipped with them. So I don't know. That was just a side note, a tangent. But it's like a lot of the newer fighters in the UFC and in MMA in general, they're just not really, a lot of them, some of them are cool, some of them are exciting, but a lot of them aren't really that interesting. They're just, they're good fighters, they're good athletes, but a lot of them just go out there, fight their fights, and then go back home. And, you don't really, they get on these interviews, they don't really have a lot of fire behind them, or they're completely off kilter. You know what I'm saying? And usually what is making a lot of the headlines news-wise now, like the fighter I'm about to talk about, are fighters that are so kind of awkward that's making the news. Where like in the past, John Jones is running over people in a car and stuff. You know what I'm saying? Chuck Liddell's drunk, effing people up in a bar. You know what I'm talking about? Like, guys was doing wild stuff, you know what I'm saying? Stipe fighting fires and stuff, and he's never been the most. He's been a fairly boring champion in his day. But a lot of guys like, now Izzy's somewhat out of the limelight, so we don't have Izzy out doing things with dogs and stuff and showing up on the Breakfast Club talking crazy. Sean O'Malley was good for a few headlines here and there. Now he's out of the loop. You got boring Marab there. And it's just like there's not a ton going on. You know what I'm saying? Bilal's pretty boring at welterweight. He ain't doing a lot. Connor's got new allegations, but he don't even fight anymore. So it's like really, really weird times, man. You're in the age of tip-top athletes in the UFC, but not necessarily fighters, like fighters whose lives are so chaotic and in turmoil that their only profession, career, or job, the only thing they could have ever have done is be a fighter. You know what I'm saying? That's the lineage I come from when I'm watching MMA. So them dudes and them women were wild. Ronda Rousey was wild. You know what I'm saying? She might be a little boring now, but in her prime, bro, she was wild. Ronda Rousey was the type to go to the bar and slap a man if he don't buy her the correct drink. You know what I mean? And so it's like really weird stuff now. So the only thing kind of that I've seen really kind of cycling through the news this week is weirdo Bo Nickel. Bo Nickel is a weird guy, okay? Because Bo Nickel, I don't really think he understands how he comes off in interviews and in press conferences and post-fight interviews, but he doesn't really seem to be too likable. He's a really awkward dude. He says weird things in a weird way, but I see he's getting a lot of hate online this week for how he viewed his win over Paul Craig. And I really think that he went out there. I really think that he thinks he went out there and put on an action fight, like an all action war. And that's just not what happened. And I believe that a lot of people are kind of, I know it's like, and that's another thing with what I'm talking about. These new fighters are athletes. And if they can, they're going to play it safe. Because, from the old lineage of a fighter's fighter, they're going out there to inflict damage. They're going out there to impose their will on another individual and break them. And that doesn't necessarily happen a lot with the newer MMA fighters, whether it's PFL or it's UFC. It doesn't happen as much because we're kind of in an age of outstanding athletes who might not have that killer instinct. They're just extremely good athletes. They're well trained. They know everything. BJJ, good stand-up, good boxing. They work on scrambling, cage grappling, cage scrambles. And it's just like, do you ever roll into training drunk and get into a fight with your sparring partner? You know what I'm saying? What do you do on the weekends? You know what I'm talking about? I think you're dealing with a lot of fighters that sit at home is what I'm saying. You know what I mean? It's just like, so you got a guy like Bo Nickel, and he just seems so awkward that's making the headlines. His awkward reaction to his fight and how people view his fight versus how he views it, and it's just not really news. So when you're trying to, make this content, you're like, bruh, can someone slide John Jones a baggie and he go out there or get in a car wreck and make some headlines? You know what I'm talking about? I mean, I don't want nothing to happen to the man, but still, it's like, bro, it's a little bit boring at the moment. You know what I'm saying? But nevertheless, I mean, that's the take. What's going on with Bo Nickel, how he won his fight versus the reality of how we all looked at it. You know what I'm saying? And when if I spoke on that fight real quick, I mean, when you're looking at it, you're like, Bo, you're going out there and, I mean, just go for a takedown. I know Paul Craig is waiting to tap you and submit you, but, try your wrestling skills against his submission skills. You're not doing nothing on the feet to the man. He's huge. You can barely get around his range. Get him to the ground and let's see what goes on. That's all I'm saying. Just like have that instinct. Like, bro, instead you were just content with just going 3 rounds of pity pat, trying to lay hands on him and not necessarily succeeding, and Paul Craig spamming a lot of teep kicks and front kicks. So that's what it is, man. There ain't a whole lot going on at the moment, and based out of what I just laid out for you for this card coming up this Saturday, ain't getting ready to be nothing going on until the main event. So that's what it is, man. So that's the end. That's the tweet. So please like, subscribe, comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about these new age fighters versus the old age fighters. Let me know if you think right now MMA is a little bit boring at the moment, like in between the big fights, because that's what it kind of seems like. I don't know. But anyway, let me know. Let me know who you got in the main event, Petr Yan versus Davison Figueiredo. And please like, subscribe, comment. And once again, I do want to thank you for joining me for another episode of Matter of Fact MMA. And I'll check you next time. Peace.